We like to believe the rich have it all together, that celebrity, that money are more than enough to keep life's troubles at a distance. Twice this week, we've been reminded of the lie that is. The fashion icon Kate Spade, we thought, had it all: success, power, and influence. Even her husband called her taking her own life unexpected, a complete shock. They'd separated, but their teen daughter, most believed, meant everything to her. Apparently, not enough. Not a single photo of the many thousands taken of the designer betrays the torment with which she had apparently wrestled for years. Even now, among her siblings, the arguments continue over just how depressed she was. And then this morning, to awaken to the news that one of my favorite celebrity chefs, Anthony Bourdain, took his own life in France. A flair for food, for writing, impeccable insight. On the outside, Bourdain seemed so together, so in touch with himself and the world around him. But as a chef, he was quite familiar with the old saying, never judge pie by the crust. The Anthony Bourdain, whose go-go lifestyle seemed so desirable on the outside, was clearly different from the Anthony Bourdain on the inside, the real Bourdain, known only to him. Suicide is such a horrible thing, taking not just a single life, but a piece of each of us. The deaths of Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade this week should be to each of us a reminder that there are some things money cannot buy. You can comment on Facebook. Look for WFAA.